Okay, so wow, what a couple of weeks we've had in the video game sphere. First of all, there was the Helldivers thing, which almost seemed like a million years away, considering everything that's happened over the past week with Xbox. And I wanted to make a quick video from a PlayStation perspective, PlayStation fan perspective, on the Xbox Studio closing. Because yeah, there's a lot of discourse about this at the moment. And I just want to give my input because there is a lot of stuff I find worrying about the Xbox approach to the gaming industry. I've had these thoughts for a little while, more so recently with acquisitions and Game Pass. And I've had doubts about Game Pass, and I'm going to make a green screen video regarding that at some point. But yeah, so I won't talk too much about Game Pass just because I'm going to do an entire video dedicated on my doubts regarding that. And even though I do see myself as a fan of PlayStation, ultimately I'm a gamer and I'm a fan of all video games. I still play Microsoft games, albeit on my laptop, my gaming laptop. I still use Windows. I just, for budgetary reasons more than anything, only have one console. And that's how it's been for most of my life. So yeah, first of all, as everyone else has said pretty much, this sucks. People are losing their jobs. That's the biggest negative really about all of this when you're closing an entire studio. As a PlayStation fan, there is a part of me that kind of finds it reassuring that they're closing down the studio that made really the early Xbox game that stood out to me over the past 5 or so years, and that's Hi-Fi Rush, which thankfully is now a multi-platform game. And in that respect, as sad as it is that they're closing down these studios, it's kind of reassuring that maybe I've chosen the right platform to back, because again, the only game I really have clicked with from Xbox, taking away Halo Infinite, which I did play a little bit and I did like, but by far the only one that's really stood out to me is Hi-Fi Rush. So yeah, in a weird way, that's kind of reassuring. But nonetheless, this is really sad. There's nothing positive really to take away from this, really. That's just me grasping at straws. Overall, this is a really sad thing. There's a lot of discourse at the moment about how Microsoft are handling this whole situation, closing down studios. You know, it's something that happens fairly, unfortunately, regularly these days within the industry. The video game industry is very incredibly volatile. And when you throw in acquisitions and consolidation into it, it just throws everything else into the air, like in terms of studio vulnerability and yeah, nothing's for certain regardless of what games you're outputting. RIP Factor 5. Yeah, a lot of people are digging up, you know, especially with Phil Spencer, a lot of communication he's had over the past, and Sarah Bond, in regards to like the Lionhead studio closing and how they learned lessons from that and how they won't repeat the same mistakes and, you know, things like that. And really, that specifically is an example of why maybe people in power, when it comes to these massive game companies, really maybe they should limit their communication, because Xbox is unbelievably open and very, very casual about their communication, especially with Phil Spencer. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't think I've never met him, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone in the gaming industry that's been as open as he has. And, you know, on paper, that probably sounds like a good thing, but you end up in these situations where you may say something a couple of years ago, and then later on down the line, it don't look so good when you are essentially going back on what you've said. Same thing with Sarah Bond. You know, she did that recent interview recently, just after the announcement of studios closing. And again, on paper, it might sound like a good idea to open up discourse with the community and be like, hey, this is what's going on. But again, it's a very, very sensitive issue when it comes to closing down studios. And you might want to take the PlayStation approach of just being a lot more closed, or the Nintendo approach, or Steam, anyone, like any other large company in the gaming industry, because it's really easy to put your foot in it and say the wrong things when it comes to sensitive topics such as people losing their jobs and studios closing. And yeah, in terms of online discourse, you know, there's not really much more I can say in terms of what other people in the media space have covered about this whole thing. It's honestly maybe the biggest amount of noise I've heard online about a gaming topic since Xbox announced they were going to try to buy out Activision. And it's crazy to think that it was only like a week or so ago we had the whole Helldivers 2 debacle. So yeah, it's an indicator of how crazy things are. I want to shout out though to a few videos I've seen, which I'll be referencing, such as the Colin Moriarty, David Jaffe live stream they literally just did last night, talking about this topic, as well as Kevin Kenson's video, very good. MVG did a really good video about this topic as well. Ryan McCaffrey from IGN did an interesting sort of disclosure regarding a Xbox employee, which was pretty interesting. And very much the general consensus is that, you know, Xbox are very much losing the game, and they have been for a while, and, you know, this is like another nail in the coffin. And anyway, if I want to go into the point of why I wanted to make this video, is that did nobody see this coming? Like, when you have massive acquisitions and consolidation on such a large scale as what Xbox has been doing over the past few years, you know, don't forget as well, before Bethesda, there were other smaller studios such as Ninja Theory, Rare, you know, they took their time and they were taking the small ones, and then it just ramps up. And then you had Bethesda, which is actually quite a large studio. You consider all the smaller studios that fit within Bethesda. And that sort of just, you know, happens. And so when they came onto Activision, that's really when things started to blow up, because it felt like nobody was really doing anything about it. And, well, up until, of course, people did do something about it. And eventually we had two government regulators step in to question what was going on. When you have big studio acquisitions such as this, there's always going to be some sort of studio trimming and refinement going on, because you have to see, like, look at a bigger picture. Microsoft and Xbox are these huge companies that have like thousands, hundreds and thousands of employees around the world, and they spent all this money into Activision and into Bethesda. You know, it's almost $69 billion, which is an obscene amount of money on Activision alone. They would have planned for this ages ago. Same with Bethesda. When they bought out Bethesda, they would have looked what they're going to offer, and then when they buy it and it's successful, they're going to be like, okay, we need to step on the gas in order to make this as profitable as soon as possible, when it's such a large amount of money and we already have such a large workforce. I mean, look at Activision. Activision, before Xbox bought them out, is this massive developer and publisher that own all these sub studios underneath it, and they're constantly closing them down, and they're constantly having people go across teams so they can work on their larger projects. Like, you have people from Toys for Bob going to do work on Call of Duty just after they did the Spyro game. That's the sort of environment that's being created when you have these massive consolidation efforts into place. And that's what you're going to see with Xbox. Unfortunately, that's just the case. You're going to see them trimming down the fat, and they're going to have cross-team work, which could be really cool for the people that work in those teams. You know, you get to work in completely different games throughout your career there, which could be really beneficial. But ultimately, you're going to have huge downsizing. And, you know, as Microsoft have said in their statement, they're going to be relocating some staff. You know, it's not all layoffs. That is the plan for them. They're going to be choosing the key staff members that they want to keep, and then a large number of other ones that they can scrap, because maybe they've got QA departments that can already cover, you know, that studio. Or in this case, because the studio is being closed, they can cover whatever games these staff members go on to working on. Other people have said this, MVG have said this, you know, when they buy out these studios, they're more interested in the IP than the staff members. That's just the case. There will, of course, be some staff members they want to get a hold of, but there will be a few, realistically. So, you know, they can still make Hi-Fi Rush 2. They can still make, I don't think they're going to make a Redfall 2, but they can still make a Dishonored 3, and, you know, any of these games that fell under those studios, they can still make them. So they're not necessarily going away. They'll just be made technically by a different studio, but very likely with some of the key staff members from that original studio. I'm not saying for sure they will do this, but there's no reason why they wouldn't, realistically. Other than, obviously, if they're vastly unsuccessful or critically panned, such as Redfall. But, you know, I could very well see them doing another Hi-Fi Rush down the line, or Dishonored 3, again, down the line. But it's just something you have to face when it comes to acquisitions and consolidation. You're going to see this fairly brutal closures and layoffs. We've had some pretty big layoffs recently, not just from Microsoft, but PlayStation as well. They had layoffs with Bungie. But there is at least a lot of argument there that they at least invested in job security for them. I believe it was like $1 billion or something that they did when they acquired them, which was really in good faith. Really, they didn't have to do that. That's kind of nice to see, and I kind of wish more studios did that. So yeah, from someone who, albeit very limited, have worked in the game studio space. I used to be a QA tester for a large studio, and it was a 0-hour contract, and I lost my job within. They gave me my notice 1 week before I would have to leave. It's a very, very volatile industry, and it hasn't really changed. If anything, I feel like it's probably become more volatile. And when you have these large acquisitions and layoffs, it ain't a good thing, man. It ain't a good thing for anyone. Even if you go into other industries, like the film industry, look at Disney, and the fact that they've managed to buy out Fox is just blowing away my mind after buying out all the other studios they have. Yeah, and also for very similar reasons, to sustain a streaming service, a subscription service. Yeah, so yeah. I'm trying not to speak about Game Pass too much because I want to make a video directed specifically to that. Anyway, here's hoping there won't be more closures. It seems like there might be, more closures. I mean, again, PlayStation just lay off a bunch of people. They lay off London studio. Yeah. So it's a volatile industry, and it sucks when people lose their jobs. I can't imagine working in game development right now, today in 2024, because it just seems so volatile. Like job security, it just seems so scarce. And it's weird when I hear about these acquisitions and I'm listening to podcasts like the Game Industry Biz podcast where they're talking about what studio Microsoft should buy next. Like, it's a good thing. There's one episode, I'm pretty sure that's what it's titled, I'll try and dig it up, and they mentioned Sega, and it's literally just after Microsoft either announced they were going to acquire Activision or when they got it certified. So for the life of me, I tried to find this podcast. I couldn't. Maybe I imagined it. I'm fairly certain I listened to a gamesindustry.biz podcast where they said, who should Microsoft buy next? Maybe Sega. But seems I can't find that podcast. Here's an article from Forbes instead. And yeah, we really don't need more acquisitions on either side. Yeah, it's just not a great idea. I think it's a chokehold on creativity as well as job security, which is, probably what you would hope would not be the case, considering these companies are multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies like Microsoft, literally one of the richest companies in the world. But even they can't substantiate the need for profit. And yeah, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and I hope we don't see more closures. This sucks as a PlayStation fan. Yeah. So yeah, sad video. But hopefully, yeah, look out for my Game Pass video, green screen one, hopefully in the future. Couldn't say when, there's other videos I'm trying to do. Until next time, Mark, the Magic Bean Bag, stay happy.